My fellow Nigerians, as your future president, it is only natural that I comment on United States President Donald Trump's recent reaction to the Christian genocide in our country, Nigeria. To begin with, what is a genocide? The Cambridge Dictionary defines the term as the crime of intentionally destroying part or all of a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group by killing people or by other methods. The Merriam-Webster's dictionary says it refers to acts committed with intent to partially or wholly destroy a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group. So while there is no widespread killing of Christians all over Nigeria, there clearly is the targeted killing of Christians, a genocide in northern Nigeria. And this has gone on for many years. If there is no genocide, why did Bola Tinubu tweet on January 29, 2014, saying, and I quote, "The slaughtering of Christian worshippers is strongly condemnable," end of quote, referring to Boko Haram attacks in Adamawa state that killed at least a few dozen Christians. In 2022, former President Muhammadu Buhari presented Imam Abdullahi Abubakar from Plateau State with national honors for hiding over 262 Christians in his mosque during a Fulani terrorist attack that killed over 200 people. If there is no Christian genocide, how come the 262 Christians only survived after they were sheltered in a mosque? If there is no Christian genocide, why did Pastor Ezekiel Dachomo in Plateau State receive death threats for releasing a video showing 501 Christians killed by Fulani terrorists? Some say, oh, it's just farmer-herder clashes over grazing land. Well, why can't the herders not rent or buy land for cattle ranching? Why do they insist on open grazing when ranching is far more efficient? Indeed, the Islamist terrorist group Boko Haram has clearly stated that they want an Islamic state in Nigeria. In a 2009 statement, they said their name means Western civilization is forbidden. Remember that they, like many other people around the world, consider Christianity to be a Western religion, meaning an extension of Western civilization. So yes, I wholeheartedly and gratefully welcome President Trump's designation of Nigeria as a country of particular concern, with all its attendant consequences on the Nigerian government on account of the Christian genocide in the north. All perpetrators, no matter their status, must be held accountable, and the Nigerian government, including northern state governments, must do whatever is necessary to immediately end the killings. Also, all internally displaced persons must be properly resettled and protected. Now, a corrupt politician and former minister like Femi Fani-Kayode, who is seeking favors with Tinubu, has rebuked President Trump's designation of Nigeria as a country of particular concern, forgetting that he, on June 18, 2018, had tweeted, and I quote, "The jihadists who killed the RCCG evangelists for preaching in Abuja were set free. The ones who killed Bridget, the Deeper Life pastor's wife in Kano, were set free. No Fulani terrorist has been jailed for killing more than 5,300 Christians in 2018 alone," end of quote. And on June 14, 2019, that, and I quote, "Nigeria has had more Christians murdered, more churches bombed and burnt, and more clerics slaughtered than any other country in the world over the last 58 years," end of quote. Likewise, Renaud Mokri, former President Goodluck Jonathan's spokesman, who now says there is no Christian genocide, on January 29, 2017, tweeted, and I quote, "Their voice," referring to Muslims protesting President Trump's then Muslim ban, "is so loud condemning injustice against Muslims in the US, yet very silent in condemning genocide of Christians in Nigeria," end of quote. In addition, on November 1, Bashir Ahmad, former President Buhari's social media handler, in a Christian genocide denial effort, posted on X saying, and I quote, "There has been a recurring misunderstanding about the role and purpose of Sharia courts in Nigeria, with some people assuming that Sharia courts are designed to impose Islamic law on everyone. That is not true. Sharia law is exclusively for Muslims," end of quote. Well, Bashir, if so, then why on earth was Deborah Samuel killed and burned by Muslim students in the name of blasphemy back in May 2022? It hurts even more that none of her killers has been jailed. Nigeria isn't a theocracy. Section 10 of our Nigerian constitution explicitly states that the Nigerian government, including all federating units or subnationals, that is states, cannot adopt any religion. Religious freedom doesn't mean religious standards must be imposed by the federal government or any state government on the citizens. Muslim majority states in the north can live by their Sharia standards all they want, but Sharia cannot exist side by side with the secular constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria as the supreme law of the land. Indeed, because Sharia law contradicts our Nigerian constitution, its implementation often leads to social and religious tensions and clashes between Muslim and Christian communities in the north. This has to end. On November 3, responding on X to former Kano Governor Rabiu Kwankwaso being concerned about the country of particular concern designation, United States Representative Riley Moore, who is involved with President Trump's assessments on the issue, said, and I quote, "Governor, do you care to comment on your own complicity in the death of Christians? You instituted Sharia law, that's in Kano State, that makes so-called blasphemy punishable by death," end of quote. Moreover, why does the Muslim Student Society of Nigeria, which in 2023 endorsed Tinubu for having, quote unquote, a ticket that is completely Muslim, have lines like, "We want the Quran as the constitution and jihad is calling" in their national anthem? Such indoctrination is very, very dangerous. By the way, I recently saw a news update from The Cable, one of our online newspapers, attacking United States Senator Ted Cruz for being one of those who drew attention to the Nigerian Christian genocide. The Cable suggested that because Senator Cruz is a supporter of Israel, his interest in Nigeria should be discarded. What kind of stupid and pathetic journalism is that? Didn't the Cable notice that U.S. liberal talk show host Bill Maher also talked about Nigeria's Christian genocide on his podcast a few weeks ago, and that segment went really viral? Similarly, Mike Arnold, the American former small-town mayor who was invited by Reno Omokri to side with Tinubu propagandists like The Cable and debunk Christian genocide claims, instead turned against him and acknowledged that there has indeed been a Christian genocide in Nigeria. In addition, Sean Nelson, a senior counsel at ADF International, which advocates for global religious freedom, has been on the matter for months. The fact that Nelson is close to United States Representative Riley Moore, whom President Trump asked to make findings and report back to him, should tell you a lot about his influence. Senator Cruz isn't the Cable's problem. The problem is those in the Nigerian establishment who have aided and abetted this Christian genocide for several years. Accountability is coming, and I hope it will include those in the media like The Cable that are pushing this demonic denial of the truth. So, how can a potential direct U.S. military involvement against the Islamist extremists and Fulani terrorists in Nigeria be justified? In an Oval Office meeting with former President Buhari back in 2019, President Trump said, and I quote, "We have many things that we do together, especially on terrorism. We also have a very big trade deal that we're working on for military equipment, helicopters, and the like. Also, we've had very serious problems with Christians who have been murdered in Nigeria. We're going to be working on that problem very hard because we can't allow that to happen," end of quote. In response, President Buhari said, among other things, and I quote, "Certainly security is the main issue. We are very grateful to the United States for agreeing to give us the aircraft we asked for and spare parts. We are even more grateful for the physical presence of United States military officials that go to our military institutions and train them and go to the front lines in the Northeast to see how they are performing as a result of the training given to them. That's as part of the commitment of the United States to get rid of terrorism around the world," end of quote. That's the primary justification right there. The U.S. has an active anti-terrorism partnership with the Nigerian government, which included in Trump's first term the sale of military equipment and training. Now think of this. If a teacher gives a student homework to do and provides supporting tools and materials, but the student is unable to do it, won't the teacher be justified to show the student how it is done? If you go to the gym and try to lift a heavy object but are unable to do so, wouldn't it be okay for your trainer to show you how to do it? That said, if it comes to it, to give such an action greater legitimacy under international law, especially with all the silly insinuations by Tinubu loyalists that this is all about U.S. interests in the Dangote refinery or Nigeria's natural resources or Nigeria-China relations, which aren't even very strong under Tinubu, I would suggest that President Trump should seek a United Nations Security Council resolution condemning the Nigerian government's inaction on the Christian genocide and authorizing military intervention in Nigeria. But I imagine that France, which Tinubu visits so often, may veto it, being one of the permanent members of the UN Security Council. And I must say, the whole argument about sovereignty is just weak and pathetic. Yes, Nigeria is a sovereign nation, and any foreign invasion violates the United Nations Charter and international law. But sovereignty, which isn't absolute, isn't just about legality. It's also about responsibility. Beyond borders, flags, and constituted governments, sovereignty must be backed by a country's ability and willingness to protect its citizens and maintain order within its territory. Indeed, the primary responsibility of every government isn't the protection of its sovereignty, it's the protection of life and property within its borders. Thus, when a national government repeatedly falls short of that standard and in some ways is seen as aiding and abetting such killings, as in the case of Nigeria's Christian genocide, then that national government, by moral and humanitarian default, loses its sovereignty cover. In such situations, countries that are willing and able to intervene are expected and justified by an international doctrine known as the Responsibility to Protect R2P, adopted by the United Nations in 2005, to intervene and stop the genocidal killings and suffering. So yes, President Trump is absolutely justified to act. My friend and prominent human rights lawyer Inibehe Effiong made the same point on X on November 2, writing, and I quote, "Nigeria is a sovereign country, but bandits and terrorists are invading communities and collecting ransoms as a precondition for not attacking them. A sovereign country that still imports toothpicks. Buhari ruled for 8 years and couldn't build a single hospital that could treat him. Buhari died in a foreign hospital. Tinubu has spent over 2 years governing this sovereign country and is constantly seeking medical care in a foreign country. You think sovereignty is just territorial? We don't even have territorial sovereignty given the way terrorists are easily invading our country from the Sahel region. Stop the fake patriotism and face the leadership failure that has brought us to where we are today." End of quote. Talking about Tinubu's leadership failure, here's a case in point. On June 12, over 200 Christians were killed, mostly from farming communities in Yelawata in Benue State, including internally displaced persons at a Catholic mission. On June 13, Tinubu condoled with the India air crash victims' families but ignored Benue State. On June 15, Pope Leo XIV condemned the Benue killings and urged the Nigerian government to act. Tinubu then put out a statement calling for harmony in the face of a genocidal land-grabbing invasion by Fulani herdsmen and terrorists. After public pressure, Tinubu visited Benue State but only stopped at Markadi, the state capital, for what was a political event instead of an empathetic one, saying he couldn't visit Yelawata due to bad roads. In fact, to show that Tinubu preferred optics over empathy, school children were lined up in heavy rain to welcome his convoy. Now, contrast that with this directly relevant example about President Trump. On October 31, 2020, that's 5 years ago, Trump ordered U.S. Special Forces to rescue an American hostage, Philip Walton, in a night raid in northern Nigeria after he was kidnapped from Niger without notifying Nigeria's government or security forces. They did so without losing any soldier and killing 6 of the 7 terrorists who were on guard. On November 1, Representative Riley Moore posted on X saying, and I quote, "To the government of Nigeria and Bola Tinubu, President Trump has provided forewarning if you do not correct the current state of inaction to stop the killing of our brothers and sisters in Christ in your country. The days of the U.S. looking the other way are over. I urge you to cooperate with us in preventing this atrocity that worsens every day. We want your people to live in peace, all of them, especially Christians. The president has been clear. I will not test his resolve. Many have tried and all have failed. We will not allow the gates of hell to prevail against the faithful." End of quote. Similarly, the same day, Sean Nelson, whom I mentioned earlier, posted on X saying, and I quote, "If POTUS, that's the President of the United States, has shown anything this year, it's that in foreign policy, when he acts, he means it." End of quote. Also, the Wall Street Journal's editorial piece of November 3, titled "Trump and Nigeria's Persecuted Christians" and subtitled "Islamist Terrorists Are Thriving in Africa's Sahel Region," stated, and I quote, "U.S. moral interests include humanitarian concerns, and in this case, they coincide with the fight against radical Islam. Credit to President Trump for showing he understands and may be willing to act on those interests." End of quote. In a brilliant post on X, also on November 3, Johnson Agiriga, a Nigerian IT professional, concurred with that Wall Street Journal stance. Agiriga wrote, and I quote, "The USA is the greatest force for good in the world, despite all its shortcomings. No other country in the world even comes close. The Obama and Biden administrations were very bad for Nigerians and Africans in general. We have systematic killings and displacement of Christians from their ancestral lands by radical Islamic jihadists going on for far too long, and the Nigerian government is complicit in it. Why do we have the Nigerian president and vice president, who are both Muslims, more concerned about the war in Gaza than the killings of Christians in Nigeria? More Christians are being killed in Nigeria than overall in Gaza. Why do we have Sharia law in Nigeria that is supposedly a secular country? Why do we have Christians like Deborah being burned to death for Islamic blasphemy laws, and the culprits are not brought to justice? The Christians in Nigeria really need help, and the United States is the only country that can help us. Enough is enough. The killings must stop." Thank you to President Trump and to all people of goodwill everywhere that are now interested in stopping the killings of Christians in Nigeria. God bless the USA. End of quote. Now, someone may ask, but why didn't Trump do this in his first term if there was indeed evidence of a Christian genocide in Nigeria? Yes, Trump had in December 2020 previously declared Nigeria a country of particular concern, but a month thereafter, Biden got into office and undid it. This time around, with just 10 months into Trump's second term, he has plenty of time to make a great impact. May God bless President Donald Trump. May God bless the United States of America. And may God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria.